Hi, welcome to Auntie Joe's Kitchen. Today I'm going to show you how to make my spaghetti and meatballs. First thing we're going to do is get started with our meatballs, and then we're going to go from there, okay? So let me go ahead and grab my ingredients, and we're going to get those going. So for our homemade meatballs, of course, you're going to need some ground beef. I like to use an 80-20 blend. It's just the right amount of fat content to keep everything moist without it being too dry. The worst thing about a meatballs or meatloaf or anything like that is you don't want it dry. So you want that fat content. So this 80-20 is always a good blend for that. And to help hold in the moisture with meatballs, we're also going to add a pound of ground pork. Ground pork is really good for adding an additional layer of flavor as well as holding in the moisture, okay? You're also going to need some milk. You're going to need cheese, Parmesan cheese, okay? You're gonna need some breadcrumbs, all right? You're gonna need some eggs because eggs is your binder that holds everything together, okay? And you're gonna need an onion, okay? Now, in addition to that, I like to also add some garlic powder, some pepper, and then also a little bit of salt. But you don't want to add a ton of salt because Parmesan cheese does have a lot of salt content already into it. But you'd have to taste it to see if it's right to you, okay? So we're going to go ahead and start opening this stuff up. We're going to start putting it together. First thing we're going to do, however, is we're going to chop up our onion, and I'm going to show you how to do that, okay? Okay, so we're going to take our onion. We're going to go ahead and get the outer skin off first. And go over to our garbage can here and take care of that. All right? And now we're going to go ahead and chop this up. I like bigger pieces of onion in my ground meat type things, whether it be meatballs or a meatloaf or something. It's just me. I just like bigger pieces. I like to really taste the onion. Some people don't like it that way, and that's okay. If you're one of those types of people, I would recommend using a food processor to go ahead and chop it up to a much finer consistency. So we went ahead and cut off our ends. We made one slit incision right here in our first layer, and that's going to help us with going ahead and peeling off this first layer of onion, okay? Now, depending on how much you're doing, you may need to get a second onion. So we will test that out and see. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead, cut it in half, and we're going to tip it like this, and we're going to go ahead and start cutting it into smaller wedges like this. And again, I am not a professional chef, okay? I did not go to culinary school, just a woman who loves to cook and is very Italian, okay? So if I do things a little bit different, just let you know I'm not a professional, okay? And then you're just gonna go right ahead and cut it up into more diced type pieces, okay? It's always important to have a very good sharp knife when you're doing this as well, okay? Nothing worse than trying to cut with a dull knife. So we're gonna pop that over to the edge, get our other half and do the same thing. I'm gonna go right down, make smaller wedges, okay? Okay, and then we're gonna turn it and just start chopping it up. When I get to about that point, I like to tip it. It's just easier for me to control. Okay? Then you're going to find little bigger pieces, and that's okay. You can just go ahead and just cut those up loosely. All right? So we're going to put that off to the side. We're not ready for that yet. All right? We're going to go ahead and start opening up everything, okay? So we have our knife here, so we're going to make it easy. Cut into... Now, when I'm making stuff like this, I like to make it in bulk. My husband is a big eater. So I like to make sure that there's plenty for him to last him over the week because I work during the day and I'm not home to get his lunches ready when he goes to work. So I like to make things in larger quantities. But if you also like that and you don't have that, you can always make these and then freeze them and then you have them for future use. Okay? So we just pop up our ground beef a little bit. Okay? And it's usually a 4-pound. This is about 4.2 pounds is what I had, about 1 pound. So about a 4 to 1 ratio with the pork, but again, it should be your preference, okay? So we're gonna pop that right into here, okay? All right, and then we're gonna go ahead and add in our cheese. We have one that's already started, so we're gonna use that up. And be generous. Don't wimp out on the cheese. Okay, cheese is what gives it all its flavor. Okay, so we're opening up another container. I usually have 3 of these at any given point in time because I go through so much Parmesan. So this is almost like a whole container because I used about a half of the other one. Okay, and we're gonna add in our breadcrumbs. And again, there's no real measurements, just kind of gotta get it right. I wouldn't do more than that because this can dry it out. You're just using it as a filler. Let's pop in our onion. Okay. And our milk is what gives it some nice moisture. Some people use water. I think milk is more flavorful. I prefer a whole milk to a 2%, but this is what I have right now. Okay. Whole milk with cooking is much better. So now we're going to go ahead. It's quite a bit in here, so we're going to do 3 eggs. Oh, it happens. There we go. Okay. Now we're going to mix it all together. You just got to kind of get in there with your hands and just really go to town, mixing it all up. Okay. We'll add our seasonings after we get it all primarily mixed up. You can put gloves on if you prefer to do it that way. I'm not a big fan of gloves. I like to be able to touch and feel what I'm doing. Now, obviously, if I'm doing this for a large group of people or something, I would have gloves on. But for just my family and stuff, it's fine. Okay? Just make sure you wash your hands real good. Okay? So you can see it's blending together. I like to get some fists in there and really just go to town getting it all blended together. Okay? All right. Got a nice consistency going on here. You can see it's nice and put together. All right? But we are going to stop because we're going to add our seasonings, okay? Okay. So I went ahead and just washed off our hands a little bit. I do have a clean hand fetish. So, all right, we're going to add some garlic powder. And again, be generous with it. You want to taste that garlic. Okay. I'm going to add some pepper. So perk it up a little bit. I'm going to have to open up a new container here pretty soon. And we're going to add some salt. Now, this salt dispenser likes to put a lot of salt out, so I don't need to really do much more than that. So now we're going to continue blending it. And you want to get it really well blended. Okay. Okay, we cleaned up our mess. And now we're going to go ahead and get a couple good sized cookie sheets because we got a lot of meatballs here. Okay. Parchment paper is your friend. It comes in really handy for keeping stuff clean so you don't have as much of a cleanup when you go to clean these up later. All the grease and the oil and everything will get trapped right into the parchment paper, making cleanup a lot easier. A couple sheets of that. I don't use this pan very often because it's a larger one than I normally need, but because we're doing such a large amount. Okay. So now we're going to take some of the meat mixture here. and get a nice ball going on. I don't like small meatballs. I don't see the point in having 2, 3, 4 meatballs on a plate. I mean, you can have, you know, 1 or 2 really good size ones. And they're gonna cook down a little bit. They will shrink. So I like a nice, decent size like this. Fits right in the palm of my hand, okay? So we're gonna pop that right in here, okay? And you're just going to take and gather up your meat. And you're gonna go ahead and just roll it around. Use your thumb to kind of push it along. You'll see I'm kind of pushing it to keep it circular, okay? They can touch, it ain't gonna hurt anything. Out of this, we're probably looking at maybe 20. We'll see. Okay. So you just go ahead and keep rolling them around and get different amounts. It's okay, whatever size you feel comfortable with or what you want to do. Smaller meatballs are always nice if you're doing like a meatball sub or something along those lines. When it comes to a nice spaghetti meatball dinner, I like a big old glob of meat right on there. And there is no wrong way of doing this kind of stuff. Some people use regular bread instead of using the canned breadcrumbs. Some people will saute the onions before they put them in. So it all really comes down to what you are most comfortable with and what kind of flavors you're looking for. Okay, but this will give you a nice basic startup. Some good Italian meatballs. Of course, the onions, because they're raw, like to sit there and fall out on me. But they will cook because we're going to go ahead and bake them off. Now, some people, they fry their meatballs before they do them. I like to bake mine. That's just how I was raised doing meatballs, is baking them. But I have seen people do fried. So there is no wrong way. Again, it's a personal preference. Okay, so I ended up with 24 very large meatballs. Probably could get about 40 something out of here on an average size meatball. But we're all set here. So we're going to go ahead and pop these in the oven. We're going to go at 350. We're going to do 45 minutes. We're going to turn the pan and then we're going to do another half an hour. But it's important to turn the pan because it just helps for the oven to cook more consistently so that each of these gets done more consistently. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and pop these in the oven in about 45 minutes. We'll go ahead and turn them. Okay, while our meatballs are cooking, I'm gonna go ahead and work on the sauce. Sauce is going to simmer for several hours. My husband and I like to eat very late on Sunday nights because we sleep in pretty late on Sunday mornings. It's our one day to sleep in. So we tend to eat dinner quite late. So I like to make my sauce from scratch. Okay, I do not buy jarred sauce. Once in a while I will. Usually it's the RAO brand, RAO or however you say it, because I may just want something quick when I come home and heat up some sauce and have some ravioli out of the freezer section. But 95% of the time, all the sauce in my house is homemade. Okay, it's for one thing, it's cheaper to just buy the tomatoes and do it yourself. And this way it's flavored the way that you want it to. So sometimes I use tomato puree. This time I'm using crushed tomatoes. So I like these nice big cans. They're about $1.29 a piece, up to $1.69 depending on what brand you buy. I tend to lean towards Red Pack, but unfortunately my store was sold out of Red Pack. That's okay. These are good. These Happy Harvest. Usually all these brands have very, very good flavor. So I got 4 cans out. I always have 6 cans on hand because again, I cook a lot of Italian food. So we're going to do about almost 5 pounds of sauce here. Okay, because we got all those meatballs and we also have Italian sausage because my husband prefers Italian sausage in his spaghetti. So we're going to add that as well. And it's going to be a spicier sauce, which is going to come from the hot Italian sausage links because my husband likes hot things. Okay, so for this particular recipe, because I'm doing hot Italian sausage, I will not be adding red pepper flakes, which I do like to add, but that's going to leach out enough seasoning and enough heat to make the sauce a bit spicier without adding the red pepper flakes, which should be over the top. Okay, so we're gonna head over to the stove and I'm gonna show you how to go ahead and make my homemade pasta sauce. As you can see, the ring light likes to reflect in my glasses when I'm over here. So we're not gonna be focusing too much on me. We're gonna be focusing on the food. That's the important part, okay? So we have our 4 cans of tomatoes, crushed tomatoes, all in here. And I always add a little bit of water. You know, it does have the water base, but you want to get some of that tomato stuff out of the cans. You don't want to waste all that. So I add just a little bit of water and I kind of shake it and swirl it around, and I pour it to the next can and I pour it to the next can. It ends up pretty thick, and that way I can go ahead and add that to this without wasting. Okay, so now I'm going to show you how I make my pasta sauce. Now I'm going to give you a heads up. Italians don't share their entire recipe, okay? I'm going to omit my one secret ingredient from this video, okay? It does not affect the flavor too much, okay? For me, it does, but for a standard spaghetti sauce and stuff, it's gonna taste so fantastic, you're not even gonna notice it's missing, okay? But I cannot share every single ingredient because it's just a family thing. It's a family recipe, so I'm not gonna do that. Now, I did take a couple liberties to make things a little easier on me, you know, and I will explain those as we go on, okay? But there will be one ingredient that you will not see me add because I'm not going to share that one ingredient, just to go ahead and keep it a secret family thing, okay? So let's go ahead and get into our sauce. Okay, so there's our sauce in our pan, okay? I have the flame set on a high heat right now because we're getting it warmed up, all right? So first thing I'm going to add is sugar. Okay, sugar is always good in spaghetti sauce. Some people are not a big fan of sweet sauces. It all depends on what region of Italy your family kind of came from, what you tend to prefer. My family comes from Palermo, Sicily. So my family likes a sweeter sauce. Okay, so, and I do everything by taste. Again, if I was cooking for a mass of people, I would not be re-dipping my spoon. But again, I'm just cooking for me and my husband, so it's fine. Okay, so we're gonna see how, okay. It's a good sweetness level. I don't like it super, super sweet. Some people do. I like it a little on the lesser sweet side. Okay. Next major ingredient is garlic. Now, sometimes I will go all out. I want a nice, good, healthy spoon. I will go out and actually use fresh garlic that I go ahead and break down myself. But 90% of the time, I just use the minced garlic in the jar. It works the same. Why sit there and create extra work for yourself, especially with as busy of society as we are today? So I'm gonna go ahead and stir that in. Okay. All right, those are our 2 biggest ingredients. It's a nice consistency. Okay. Next, I like to use minced onion. Just a nice cheap method. This is just dehydrated minced onion. It is real onion. There's no, it's just, see, it says onions. It's onions. It's just dehydrated onions. They will rehydrate in the sauce. It's just one less thing I have to do. I don't have to cut up an onion all the time. So we're going to go ahead and shake a bunch of these in. Just one less thing I don't have to deal with. I already cut up an onion for the meatballs. I don't need to do it for the sauce too. If you are going to do it for the sauce and you want to use a fresh onion, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to saute it, and I will show you in a future video how to saute an onion. You're going to want to saute it. That way you already have the flavors and everything coming out of the onion, and then you would add the sauteed onion to the sauce. But again, I just tend to use the minced onion. It rehydrates. It tastes exactly the same. So, we're coming together. The next ingredient I like to add is salt. Let's grab our salt. A good decent amount of salt. Okay. And we're also going to add our pepper. Okay, you want to get a good amount of pepper in there. Okay, it's starting to get a little warm, so we're going to go ahead and turn it down. And fold those spices right in. Okay. Okay, keep testing it, see if I like the flavor. So far, so good. Okay, now we're going to actually get into the seasonings themselves. Okay, first thing we got is some thyme. We're going to go ahead and put in a good, healthy amount of thyme. I always find putting a nice single layer of a spice on something seems to be pretty much the norm for me and what I like. Okay, we're also going to put some rosemary. A lot of these spices you will find in Italian seasoning if you just buy Italian seasoning. I do have a bottle that I keep around just to make things faster if I'm doing like a chicken or something and I want Italian seasoning, but I always tend to like to do things separate. Next we have some sage. Now there's two kinds of sage you can buy. There's rubbed sage, which is what I prefer. It's more like a leafy kind of a sage, but there also is ground sage, which is almost like a powder. I'm not a huge fan of that particular sage, just because it tends to clump up and you end up getting a lot more than what you want when you're seasoning something. So, okay, we're going to stir those in. Okay, just test that. Coming along nicely. Next, we have some marjoram. Marjoram is a big seasoning that we like to use. I'm going to put a nice layer of that in. And of course, probably the most important seasoning that people put in sauce is your basil. Okay? I want to give it a nice, healthy collection of basil, because that makes or breaks your sauce, is basil. Tastes pretty good. Now we're going to put the secret ingredient in, okay? It is green, but I'm not telling you what it is, okay? This is a family secret, and it stays a family secret, no offense. But the flavor will not suffer for it if you go ahead and make this without my family's little last secret ingredient. Now that we've had all the seasonings, now I'm going to go ahead and see if I need to adjust anything. Garlic will counteract sugar. Sugar will counteract garlic if you have too much of one or the other. That's good. But I am going to add a little more sugar, because I do want it just a tad bit sweeter. Okay, let's see how we're doing here. That's good. It's missing something though. I think it needs more sugar. Okay. Sometimes it needs more. Now normally, like I said, I would add red pepper, but because I'm doing the hot Italian sausage links for my husband, we will not be putting the red pepper in because the flavors from the Italian sausage are going to go ahead and spice up the sauce, give it a nice spicy perk. That's good. That's a good tasting sauce. So we're going to go ahead and put our sausage links in and let those cook in there with the sauce, okay? So we have our Premio. This is a really good brand of Italian sausage. I highly recommend it. This is the hot Italian sausage, okay? I like these links because they're smaller, they're easier to manage, and they're just a very good flavor. So we're gonna go ahead and pop these. If you really want a spicy sauce, you can cut them in half, but the natural casing and stuff will be enough for me. So we're gonna go ahead and just pop those right in there. Okay, and those will cook nicely in the sauce and we'll spice up our sauce nicely. So now we're going to let it cook down a little bit, and then we're going to come back in about an hour and test it again and see, because the seasonings now have to cook in, and we'll see if there needs to be any adjustments, of any additional seasonings added, more sugar, more salt, anything like that. So we'll come back in an hour. Right now, it tastes really good. So, okay, our meatballs are done. We're going to go ahead and pull those and get those ready. You can see our meatballs are ready. You can see that they've shrunk quite a good deal. So I'm going to pull one out and show you what we got here. So our big meatballs have now turned into meatballs roughly about this size. So not quite as big as my hand was. I have shrunk down a bit. The pork has a tendency to do that. So now we're going to pull these out and let them dry. I'm going to show you how to do that. And then we get to deal with the drippings. Okay, so we got ourselves a platter, or you could use a larger plate. Get yourself a couple paper towels. I usually use the Selecta size, and you get four halves. And we're going to go ahead and pop these out of here and let them drain a little bit to get rid of some of this grease. All in all, we have some good looking meatballs though. We got quite a bit of grease here because the pork will do that. The pork will create a lot of grease. And you can see why the benefit of the parchment paper is it kind of holds some of the grease in. Now, if some did get on the bottom of my oven, it's going to happen. I probably should have used a pan with higher sides, but this is the biggest pan I own. So, as far as a baking sheet goes, so I kind of wanted to use this one. So, I will wipe up the oven once it cools off a little bit. I'll just take a wet washcloth and some soap and clean that up on the bottom. I'm going to show you how to get rid of the grease because you do not want to put it down the drain. Putting it down the drain is a bad thing. Okay, so I got myself a nice ceramic bowl. You want a ceramic bowl. Do not use a wooden bowl. I do have wooden bowls because the heat of the hot grease will be too much for it. So you want to use a good ceramic bowl. I would not use a metal bowl because the outside is going to get very, very hot if you go to touch it. So the ceramic bowl is your best bet. Okay, grab your pot holders or your oven mitts or whatever have you, and we're going to pick this up and we're going to dump this right into this ceramic bowl, because what we're going to let it do is we're going to let it harden, and then we're going to scrape it into our garbage can. Okay, so we're going to leave that alone. So now we're going to take our parchment paper here. You can see our pan is virtually clean. So I'll grab my garbage can here. We don't want to drip across the floor. gather this all up, pop it in there. And you can see that our pan, I'm not going to touch it because it's fresh out of the oven, is virtually clean. There's not a lot of scraping of meat. It's not a lot of working your butt off to try and get all of that off there. You just got to clean it under some hot water with some soapy water and you're good to go, okay? So in the meantime, we will let this cool off. And later tonight, before I go to bed, I will scrape it out into my garbage can. I'll put a layer of some paper towels down, scrape into my garbage can, and that's the best way to get rid of it. Much better than putting it down your drain. You never, ever, ever put grease down your drain. And here is our finished product. Enjoy.